My guest today has returned from the dead. He's come back to life today to say goodbye to this podcast. I'm excited to welcome producer Henry.
Thanks, Adam. This is a bittersweet moment for sure, but dude, I'm excited to be here.
It's been, how long have we been talking about this for? Like 2 months now?
For quitting, yeah, 2 months. It was a discussion, but this has been almost 4 years of our life where it's been almost daily messages.
Yeah,
sometimes at like 11:30 p.m. I'm wrapping something up. But yeah, like 2 months ago, I mean, I've been transparently talking with about this for a long time.
Bleep that name.
Oh, that's my job. And it was just like a lot of thought and a lot of thinking and like not wanting to bring anything to your attention before I knew what I wanted to do. But yeah, like 2 months ago, I tried to give you a fair amount of heads
you definitely
up.
Did.
10 weeks notice, I think is,
yeah, dude.
I think that's responsible. But yeah, I think ultimately it was time for me to, instead of helping you on your artistic journey, for folks who've listened and, paid attention to some of the other episodes I've hosted, like I do my own artistic endeavors, not stand up and not podcasting. But I have not had time, energy, or like bandwidth at all to pursue my own things.
Yeah.
And
so is St. Thomas coming back?
There's no more music. Honestly, ghostwriting is definitely an option.
Okay.
I was talking about this with a friend the other day who was asking me about my music career. And I was telling him like, I wrote a rap song for Stryker Medical Supplies. for their annual, they hold a banquet for their top salespeople.
Did it pay well?
It paid surprisingly not well.
Really?
Yeah, this was, I'd say probably 2017, and a friend of mine had started working there, and he was a salesperson and was.
Do you remember any of it?
The rap song. God, this is slightly embarrassing.
Yeah,
so
hold on, let me.
The university, when Jim Harbaugh started coaching at the University of Michigan, they wrote a song about him becoming the coach and how the University of Michigan was coming back as like a football powerhouse. And I wrote a remix to that about how Stryker was coming back in Q4 with record sales.
Was it good?
No, it was. No, I mean,
did it kind of slap, like just the beat and everything?
I think my $250 was an underpayment of severe proportions.
Yeah.
But I could totally see myself still writing music, performing. That ship has sailed. But even my own writing and like short stories, historical fiction, that sort of stuff, like on top of a full-time job, producing this podcast, other ventures that I've done, I've just been creatively drained. As like, you've talked to me a lot about when you overtax yourself. And I've been overtaxing myself since 2017, and then working on this, adding on top of that since 2019. So I think I was just ready to like dive into the things that I want to do instead of my previous place of employment. I think it was episode 82, Hot Tub Boats. I was helping the guy who created it see his vision through. Podcast, I'm helping see your vision through. Some of the other businesses that'll remain unnamed, I'm helping the founders see their vision through. Even my job that I started in marketing was helping.
I can't believe we didn't get that one guy on, the drone guy.
Drone guy?
The guy that you saw.
Oh, like, my God.
I still want to talk.
I don't, he hasn't responded to my
texts.
texts.
Can you tell that story now? Or I can't remember if you told that story at all.
I told the story, and I believe it got cut, and we might cut this if I did tell the story. Okay, so we'll see. I had started my own marketing agency, and a friend who's a lawyer put me in touch with one of his clients who needed a logo done.
This is our mutual friend.
Yeah. And he needed a logo and a website done, so I reach out to him, and I'm talking on the phone, and he just immediately starts telling me really intricate details about my life. Like asking me about how my brother is in the military, like, oh, I can just tell you have a bad relationship with your mom. And I'm just like, this is my first time ever conversing on the phone with this guy ever. And he, so anyways, we meet up. I convince him to have a meeting where I'm going to pitch him on the logo and the website. And we go to this Mexican restaurant in Bellevue, and we're sitting at the table, and he's just like not engaging with me. Like me and you, we're making eye contact.
Yeah.
We're having
I can't stop.
we're having a threaded conversation that makes sense sequentially and linearly. This guy is just like looking around. I'll like talk to him about how I'm interested in doing the website, my experience. And then he'll just say something like, "Don't you think it's pretty loud in here? It's pretty loud, right?" And then he starts snapping. The waitress comes over and he goes, "Honey, I'll give you $1,000 if you turn this music off. It's terrible." And I was like, oh my God. And then she went, the music turns off. He gives her $1,000 cash, just like out of his pocket. And that happens like the rest of the night, where he's like incredibly
just full Asperger's, right?
Oh
like,
my,
yeah,
just
like
I think it's autism.
Yeah.
It's not even the burgers anymore. We're full on. And the night ends without me closing the deal. He's interested, but we talk business for probably 5 minutes. And the rest of it is him telling me about how he got Shaq to shoot 31 out of 32 free throws from the foul line using his psychological tricks and methods and coaching. Mm-hmm. He got Bill Gates to launch Microsoft. He did this.
Don't cut this time, please.
He did this. He did that. He did this. And I'm just like, all right, so are you going to like use my services? Like anyway, so
he's just fucking hiding the ball on you.
Exactly. Weeks and weeks of me like texting him, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm busy. Let's meet next week." And then one day he just calls me out of the blue and is like, "Are you free right now?" I was like, yeah, sure, I'm free." He's like, "Meet me at Mount Si in 30 minutes." And I was like, okay, that's a little out there, but I want to close this deal. This guy is incredibly successful, has money, has incredible experiences. And so I drive out to Mount Si. And I pull up next to him, and he goes, "You want to see something really cool?" And I was like, yeah, sure. This guy's like 75, wears sweatpants, polo tucked into his sweatpants. Mm-hmm. 8-figure net worth would be my guess. 8 to 9 figure net worth. And he's just driving like a Honda Odyssey that has like dirt on the side, scratches on the side. And we go into the back, and he pulls out this like robotic drone that looks like a helicopter if like all of the armor and like the sides have been peeled off so you see the guts. Mm-hmm. He goes, "This is very illegal. These are my custom made helicopter drones. I engineered these." And he pulls it out and starts flying it. And it like the only way I can describe.
Didn't he have a dog in the...
He does have a dog, which I did not discover for another 5 to 10 minutes because he's flying this helicopter drone. I remote controlled helicopter is how I'll refer to it. And it is flying like nothing I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Like UFO style, where it's
stop on a dime,
switch directions, pivot, goes. And then I just hear like a little bit of barking coming from his van. And I'm like looking back, and he goes, "God damn it." And then he starts shuffling back to the car. He has a bowling bag, like where you put your shoes and your ball. It's mesh on the outside, and he unzips it, and he pulls out this like mangled furry little lap dog that looks like it hasn't been bathed. It looks like it has dreadlocks because it has not eye boogers and crusties that like have blinded it completely. And he just picks it up by its neck. Shut up. Shoves it back in the bag, zips it back up, and then just goes back out to flying helicopters. This dog smelt like death.
Yeah.
The worst smelling dog.
Dude, the fact that you're telling it, like Jose Bolaños came on yesterday and told this story about Rob Schneider that is like equally like it's back-to-back episodes of just older men being super weird with animals. It is out of control.
I've never seen anything like this too. And I don't know this guy that well. I'm like trying to be friendly with him because I'm trying to earn his business, one. And two, that dinner we had, he's telling me, like I mentioned, Shaq, Bill Gates. He talks about like some of the immigrant people he works with when they cross the border. Now that he's retired, he uses his psychological tools, coaching, and tricks to now help refugee immigrants. And I'm like, it's all like coming at me like 1,000 miles per hour. And then we're out in the fields, and he literally like has a dog in a bowling bag, just like stuffed in there, smelling atrocious, blinded by crusties that he just like will grab by its neck and just be like, shut up.
And you never closed the deal too?
Never closed the deal. So we had a conference call later with his business partner, who I guess had not been kept abreast that he had been going down this. Anyways, if you look up StarQuest on Google, you will find 5 half-finished websites for this guy, each with a different logo. They all include his business partner's name, but not his name, and they'll include his business partner's photo. I am of the belief he died.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going with. And that's why he won't respond to my calls. But anyways, this is just one of the many adventures.
Are you slightly scared of him at all?
I honestly, I was, but once he like stopped responding to me, I was like, oh, he like out of sight, out of mind. But like when the things he knew about me, just based off my tone of voice, like his pattern recognition of like, okay, the way he's speaking about these things, the way like he was very in tune with like how you were acting.
Yeah. He was like breaking you down.
Yeah. But
mentally.
like over the phone, in person, and he's like sizing you up, and he just can figure things out about you incredibly easily. And that was scary for me of when I was like, if this website doesn't go well.
Yeah, that you probably dodged a bullet too. Like, just that's a tough client, right?
Yeah. Oh,
just on a dime, he's gonna just like change his mind. And
well, and we'll talk about Chase more a little bit. But so when I'm like pitching him, I was like, Chase, I'm gonna pay you to make some logo mock-ups, and then that way, like, I can close the deal because I'll have these mock-ups showing we're serious, we're for real. Every single one, he was like, this isn't it. And I'd be like, okay, well, what more are you looking for? And he goes, I don't know, but this isn't it.
The worst fucking client like, possible.
Okay. Can you send me some inspiration for what you want? And he goes, no. When I see it, I'll know. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to keep spending money because I want your business. But anyways, that's the one of the crazy old men I've met in my life. And something that I haven't had time to do is to extend myself to meet these people and to throw myself down these rabbit holes. So
fuck. All right, let's pivot a little bit though.
Yeah.
So I forgot that you died. Like that we killed you.
I don't know how you forgot.
Yeah. Like I forgot about. So when you were coming on, I was like, oh shit, we got to bring Henry back to life. So I totally forgot. We did that for like 4 different episodes of having that whole sequence of shit.
Yeah.
But you told me like, I don't know, 8 weeks ago or something that this is like your choice. And I went back and forth a bunch on like whether or not this was something I wanted to continue doing. And I just came to the conclusion, like this was our project that we started. Like it wouldn't be here without you. Like there was something about like having you in my corner and pushing through, and even like COVID where we started doubling up on the episodes. And I don't know, man, I really, because anybody that knew that the podcast was ending or that I had talked to about it, they're just like, oh, well, you could do this, you could do that and stuff. And I don't think it would capture what it's been. And I didn't have the motivation. Like there was something about our camaraderie and teamwork, and like there are so many things that you've taken care of. Like there's just no way that this would have happened without you doing it. And
I'm not going to disagree. I feel like from day one to now, definitely required a person like me. I would argue, and I did tell you this, I think you could continue doing either this project or something else with another person.
For sure.
I think you could do it alone with this pre-programming intro music, like sort of just dialing back production value.
Yeah.
That doesn't speak to like the inspiration or the motivation to do it, but I don't think this has to be the end of like Adam Tiller digital content
for sure,
or even like podcasting.
And it won't be.
Yeah.
I do think podcasting has changed a lot since when I first got into it versus.
Isn't that crazy? Just like how much has changed in 4 years.
Absolutely. And I talked to Jesse Warren about this recently, just about what social is and like where it's going and stuff, and how every few years the thing changes.
Yeah.
And they adopt like 70% of what the previous thing was. So you just kind of always have to be like up to date on it.
Yeah.
And this model, I think, is antiquated. Like we started it figuring a lot of things out and like made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure we'll talk about some of those.
Yeah.
But
like a lot of them were me being stubborn too. And I was like, this is what I want to do creatively. And a lot of them, like we probably would have had more of a reach with the podcast if I had followed what you were saying, but it was sort of,
I mean, I agree 100%.
Yeah. But I that wasn't what I wanted to make in that, at that point in comedy.
Yeah.
Like it was just, hey, I want to get reps. I want to like have more experience doing this. And now it's gotten to a point where like, if I'm working as much as this is, it's gotta have some kind of results.
Yeah.
And I think where we are in the cycle of like social media and podcasting and online content, this isn't the smartest use of my time anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I also think there's going to be a breaking point too. And I think that was sort of one of the interesting parts for me was diving into the world of stand-up and all of a sudden feeling like, honestly, like my entire life was sort of consumed by like thinking about stand-up, thinking about digital strategy for comedians, looking at other comedians, seeing what they were doing. And from when we started to now, there were a lot of podcasts back then. Mm-hmm. There are that many more today. Everybody is posting digital clips on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram of their podcast. So if you have one episode and you put 3 clips out and everybody who has a podcast is doing that, all of a sudden everything is so saturated. Everything, like how many podcasts do you listen to a week? Like
none anymore.
Yeah.
Like I've actually, the more I've done this, the less I've done that.
That's completely the same. And it's like, I'm looking at like what's next in the space more so than like, oh, you just need to like improve the quality or improve like your ad buy, or it's like, no, there's too much of this to like really break through.
I think that the market was inefficient and it is now efficient.
Yeah.
So back in 2010, when like comedy podcasts were starting, this was an underserved market where like people were like, oh, these are real stories of comedians and shit like that. And now that like podcasting has become so popular, like it's not this completely, like there's so many other people doing similar things. And then it turns into what's the best guest I can book. And like, I don't know. Also, I don't think I'm that interesting, dude. Like I'm just a regular, like I'm just a comic trying to be funny. And that's been one of the best things that's come out of this is like, I think there are so many comedians, and I think you would agree with this, that like they have no idea how unimportant they are.
Dude, okay. So on the way up here, I was thinking of like how to say this. And I think I came up with a good way to say it. And I'll let the fans, all 10 of them, decide. Yeah. Some people have something to say. Most people just want to be heard. Mm-hmm. And I felt like there were a lot of people on this show who had ridiculously unique stories, experiences, and expertise to share. Mm-hmm. And those were by far my favorite episodes. You can talk about Glenn and all 3 episodes we did with Glenn, and each one he provides like, he's not trying to be anything. He is being himself, and like his experiences have shaped somebody who's incredibly interesting.
Yeah. He's not insecure.
He is not insecure. He's very secure in who he is. Mm-hmm. I looked at Eric Almirola, NASCAR driver. That's just like inherently interesting and unique. Mm-hmm. But then you can start breaking it down into, I would say like levels of comedians. And they're the people who have achieved something and are coming on this podcast and are like not trying to get anything out of it. And then there are comedians who come on this podcast, and I don't think they're like trying to gain exposure, but they're forcing it. Mm-hmm. They're trying to say something even though they have nothing to say. So they end up just wanting to be heard. But it's like what you're saying isn't funny, it's not interesting, and it's not providing that much value. So like, where do you fit in this world? When I'm like, I can have a dude who was getting chased by wolves in Alaska, living off the land for almost a decade, or I can have a stand-up comedian who doesn't really know what their voice is yet. I'm going to always tend towards the first.
But that's also a reflection on the types of comics that I was around at that point in my development. So like the first couple of years, it's just, you have this like raw, like you just have these feelings like I know that I need to be doing this thing, but I don't know how to channel it all in.
Yeah.
And you see like the development across the episode, like Quinn has gotten better and better on podcasts every time. So there's some of that where I'm like, yeah, they just need to hone those skills a little bit more.
And that's where I was like, I need to be careful, because I'm not like trying to shit on anybody in terms of like, we're all doing
a fair judgment. Or I don't even call it a judgment. It's just like
I'm judging them. No, I
mean, you listen to every one of them. So if they have anything to say, just fucking, you go through and listen to almost 200 episodes of local comedy bullshit.
Well, and that's what it was really cool at the same time. Like, and I don't know these people the way you know them, so I'll speak in a little bit more like generalities, but Jesse Warren's first episode, I'm like, fuck this guy. I don't like him. He's kind of a douche. I don't think he's funny. His last appearance, I'm editing the podcast, having to pause it because I'm laughing so hard at what he's saying. Yeah. And I'm like, I felt like I don't know him at all, but I felt like through those episodes, I got to know him, got to understand his comedy. He got stronger at podcasting and being a guest. And literally it went from like me really disliking him and like groaning when I saw he was on the guest list to have to edit him for 2 to 4 hours on video to like, oh shit, this Jacked episode is going to be absurd. Oh, this bonus pod with Jesse is going to be absurd.
See, that's the thing is with Jesse, you just have to find the things that you enjoy about him. He's so unpalatable in certain regards that like, if you find like, because it took me a while, I was like, this dude's doing all this stuff, like he's motivated or whatever, but then he just goes on these like tears of like, I drink breast milk and shit like that, and I'm like, what? And then I started hanging out with other people, and you're like, hey, have you heard Jesse talk about
dude, I literally, he's the one thing I always think about when I'm at the gym and I'm squatting. I think about him talking about popping boners from Jacked.
Dude, he talked like with full sincerity. I'm rock hard.
Rock hard right now.
He had to wear 2 pairs of compression shorts. I'm never going to forget that.
I never.
It's so weird.
No, there's so many moments from this 181 episode streak that I'm like, I will never forget this. Some probably shouldn't mention to keep the reputation of the guests in check and aligned.
Yeah.
Others absurd.
We've had to cut a lot of things, dude, that like
maybe that's the next project is going through, because I have every episode, I have every audio, every video file on hard drives, and it's like pulling up some of those moments and creating like one episode of all the stuff that was on the cutting room floor.
I mean, okay, to speak in generalities, we had one guest come on who's pretty famous, like has a big presence, and just said the wildest stuff about like
absolutely unhinged.
Yeah.
Unhinged.
People trolling that person online and then pursuing those people on an individual basis. And like, I
wait,
think
but not even trolling him.
Oh yeah.
It was somebody on Instagram making comments to other people in the comment thread that he found unacceptable. So he would spam them with hundreds of voice messages and calls telling them to knock it off, because what they were doing was...
We might have to edit this, because even saying people...
Because he goes, what they were doing, he's like, I'm not going to stand for this type of shit. You're going to make one inappropriate comment, I'm going to harass you endlessly.
It was insane.
Red flags.
And then
red flags.
The craziest was the phone call to me afterwards where I was like, hey, I was thinking about that thing. Maybe we shouldn't have that in the episode. And I was like, that was the best part of the episode. It was literally, I was watching it, I'm like, if you watch my reaction in the video of what he says, I'm like, what?
When I was editing it, I had like I was only watching your reaction during that part. I would like cut back and forth occasionally, but when we were deciding whether or not to leave it in, I had it up there and your eyes just get wider and wider. And you start like a smile sort of breaks. You couldn't contain it. The smile just sort of broke just a little bit.
Sometimes shit happens on this show. Like, dude, I didn't know what I was doing when I got into this.
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't ever expect to have cameras and like, it was just in that room.
Yeah.
Messing around, like putting in a couple mics, and it's grown into a bunch of shit. I mean, the first episode we did was 3 hours long.
Yeah.
The intro was unbelievably pre-written. I don't know what I thought was going to be repeatable or whatever.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. Like, Sarush was a great guest.
Totally.
And it just turned into, okay, I have this person. I don't know if I had any idea of like where it was going, or I just was like, oh, I need to generate like momentum.
Yeah.
And it definitely did, but there was like, you essentially put me on a schedule, which was great in the sense of like, I hit a consistency, but it also like the quality just was affected, you know? There's not, it's hard to book that many guests, especially with doing stand-up every night like I was. And there was a period of time where I was working full-time, doing a podcast every week, releasing a cartoon every other week, and doing stand-up every night.
I think also there's like this misnomer that if someone says like, oh, I do a podcast, they imagine it's like, I press record, I bullshit, I press stop recording, and I upload it.
Mm-hmm.
The way you decided to go about this was so much different than that. So much more different than that. It was, again, getting you on the schedule, I think was great for like consistency, getting in reps like you talked about. But you really went like, if people could see what is going on in this apartment right now, like you didn't just be like, okay, we're going to hit record and talk and then end it. There's structure to it. You thought out like what you're trying to go for each episode. You pre-planned each episode. You're booking out weeks in advance for each episode. You're learning new technologies. I'm then sending you new technologies and you have to go research them, figure out how to implement them. Because that's most podcasts that are of like high quality. The producer is in the room producing.
Yeah.
We
evolved with what we were doing.
Exactly. Where I would get the files, then go back and edit them. Whereas like if I'm editing a podcast in real time, it's so much easier, so much more efficient, but that just wasn't going to work with our lives.
No.
And so we had to sort of like,
I'm so glad we're going to be done with that. By the way, like I can't, my whole living space has been dedicated to this. And like when I was thinking about moving to New York, like, I'm like, how the fuck do I do this? And so I just like, it was dominating my headspace, the writing, the prepping, the booking of guests, like people changing schedules. And, you know, I love doing this and it was a lot of fun. And, you know, before I forget, like there are some people that have been consistently watching and listening. Ralph, fucking Chandler, trying to think who else comments always there. I mean, there's Jeremiah, like there's just a bunch of people that have consistently, Lynette, she said it, like this has influenced a lot of people in stand-up to like kind of want to pursue a project or get something going, I guess. And like, that's cool to me.
And I thought that was one of the reasons I like, because if you look at podcast producers, most of them aren't like tenured for long periods of time. It's a very like churn and burn job. One of the things that like definitely kept me around, one was the growth, just like being a part of something that was growing and improving. That's just a good feeling. Even if you start at shit and you make your way to like less shit, that's still like those steps are fun to hit everywhere, every step along the way, to be like, oh, we're like doing something, we're building something.
It's like seeing a sitcom get like the technology get better and like editing, everything.
And you personally, like I remember a lot of my comments at the beginning were much more like host focused of like, here's what you can do to make the episode go smoother. Here's what you can do. And by the end, my notes were much more like, you need to tell your guests to do this, or like, oh, you should like fix your camera to be in a different. But at the beginning, it was much more like, okay, well, don't do this as a listener. Don't do that. Don't do this. Okay, well, when I'm editing, I notice you do this a lot. And so like trying to like work out some of those kinks, but like embarking on the project was what was fun to me.
Oh yeah.
This is something new for me. I'd done audio editing. I've been around music editing. I tried to launch my own podcast back in 2016 before I thankfully scrapped that project. But being a part of something where it's like, no, we're just going to do this. And sometimes it's going to suck. Sometimes we're going to hit gold. Sometimes we're going to leak Halo secrets and blow up on the video game side of the website or the internet, I mean. And just like throwing yourself into something, it like sort of aligns with like something I've learned as I've gotten older, which is like, I don't really care what people are into. I just like people that are into things. Mm-hmm. And like when I was younger, it's like, oh, I like people who like this. And now it's like, oh, you're interested in birding? Please talk to me for an hour about that. Oh, you're really into your podcast? You're really into your comic strip? Tell me about your comic strip. Like someone who's into something enough to commit themselves.
Yeah, super passionate people. Yeah. Like, about something.
Yes. But like more than just because I feel like, especially with the internet, so many people care about things and don't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. Whereas it was such an action mentality that it was so easy to like go along for that journey because I'm a doer. And to be a part of something where it's like, no, we're doing this every week. I'm doing this every other week. And I'm performing 4 to 5 nights a week. Like I can see why other comics really like latched onto that work ethic and are like, oh, I want to do something.
Yeah. But that's the other side of that is it's been way too much.
Yeah.
And it's affected my personal life. It's affected relationships and like it's affected
Are you talking about the podcast specifically or sort of like all of it?
I think entertainment in general, there's a lot of pressure to always be doing that thing, whatever it is. And there's a lot of FOMO. Like wherever you are, if you're in Seattle, it feels like you should be somewhere else. And it's unhealthy. You know, like there's a huge component of luck on whether or not you're going to be commercially successful in what you're doing. But there's a lot of just really toxic, like hustle mentality mindsets around entertainment. And I got to a point where it's like, dude, I was working full time, falling asleep at my desk. I was angry all the time because I wasn't taking care of myself. I gained like fucking 20 pounds. I felt like shit all the time. I was chain smoking, like all this shit. And it was like, oh, just to get to whatever, like, I wasn't even enjoying the process. So I've been paring things back. And like, when you told me you wanted to be done and it first hit me like, dude, I legitimately like I started like welling up. Like I've burned my friends out talking about this, you know, like it screwed me up and I looked at different options of what I wanted to do. And I just came to the conclusion that right now, I don't know if long-term this is the permanent decision. Like I'm keeping enough stuff so that if I want a podcast again, I can in a smaller controlled way, but I don't want the stress. And I want to focus on stand-up. And part of focusing on stand-up for me is like living more life outside of being at a comedy club every night.
Dude, totally. And this is like something that I can relate to with music, where if you notice like rappers who rap about rapping, it's like you need to go outside.
Yes.
And like touch some
They're
grass.
technically proficient though.
They're amazing. Like I can name tons of rap, like Eminem at this point in his career. All he raps about is how technically good at rapping he is. Mm-hmm. Logic only raps about how good at rapping he is. Mm-hmm. You need to go out and experience more. And like, I'm not saying for those two, I'm saying like just in general as an artist, and that's where you can draw inspiration from.
Sure.
If you're constantly working, you're having no reflection time. You're having no other inputs other than the work.
It's hard because there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You know, and I started realizing like, oh, what I had to draw from was getting smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. And then also like, I just wasn't present for people. So like a lot of, you know, art is inspired by your relationships. Yeah. And if you're just self-obsessed in that pursuit, you're not going to really have very many relationships. So leaving that day job and then, you know, taking a break from this, I don't know if I'll be done for sure from podcasting. I don't think it's personally my strength. Like I think I'm a better writer and a better stand-up. And I think after doing that for 4 years, I can say, hey, these are things I like to do. And if I want to try and monetize, that's the path to go.
Yeah.
But like doing something because I feel like I have to do it is stupid. And then also, I mean, if this was making a shitload of money, maybe I would do it. Like the only reason why I would really like want to stay is because I know some people get something out of it.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, those people do not contribute to the goddamn Patreon. And you like, I don't know. I got lost in my thought, but we do need to talk about a couple things.
Wait, don't we need to plug the subscribe?
Oh,
in the first 5 minutes of the episode.
Yeah. I was like, if there's going to be a wait until the next episode, we probably don't need to do it.
No, I'm fucking with you.
Couple people we need to recognize too. Mike G.
Yes.
Mike has done all of our fake ads and our real ads, however you want to look at it. And he's having a bunch of success himself with he's doing t-shirts for Avenged Sevenfold.
Yeah.
He's been on the podcast before. Mike, has done solid for, I mean, I know you've worked with him individually too. Like
I've worked with Mike on, I'm going to put his social plug like right here. Because his art is amazing. And if you're either a comedian or a musician or someone in the creative field, entrepreneur, needs some graphic design, Mike's your guy. He's amazing.
He's just an amazing
person.
Like, he's the best to talk to and interact with. He's a pure artist where you're like, dude, it's 4:00 in the morning.
And as a producer,
yeah.
you start to pull your hair out sometimes. Yeah. But I will say, like, Mike, super consistent, super high quality.
He did all of our thumbnails.
Yep.
All of our fake ads. He designed logos for you for Hot Tub Boats.
Yep. He did logos. He did all of the graphics. He designed all of the merch. He's incredibly talented and a great person. Mm-hmm. That's another, like, we'll talk about Chase. Obviously, he was integral to the podcast success. Another just like easy person to work with. Like that was one of the things that made it so like 3 years later, it's easier to keep going because you're like, okay, well, everybody's hitting their deadlines, oftentimes turning things in early and like giving creative feedback and are just like good human beings. It makes it really easy. It's like, you're not like dreading having to reach out to these people and get stuff.
Chase is like the strangest combination of art and business.
Yeah.
Like he is so fast. He's so consistent. And he did all of our beefcake and butterball stuff. He did all the cover art that we were doing at the beginning of the episode. Like when we started, it was these 3-hour episodes with different cover art for each thing. And it was great. Like he's done so much work for us.
Yeah.
And he's been on the podcast too. Love that dude. And I hope like at some point he and I will get to collaborate again. Like I think if I ever do any writing where it's like any kind of adult cartoon type thing.
I mean, he's your guy for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane how good he is. Let me see if there's any.
Also just some other people that I think were pretty awesome to the podcast. One would be Jaga.
Absolutely.
Every episode, as you have heard, ends with Jaga. He's also the vocals on the Storytime theme music and turned that around for me incredibly quickly. Mm-hmm. I think Travis Thompson letting us use the intro music was very cool of him, or of his manager to approve that. And it's a bummer we never got him on the podcast after I felt like years of him saying like,
Travis
someday,
is busy. Yeah.
He's not in a negative way at all. Just like always hoping to get that big fish, but he was in every episode with the intro music. Mm-hmm. And I think an artist of his pedigree and caliber and notoriety to like give up his intro music like that for free was really cool.
Really nice.
Yeah. And so those are two people off the top of my head. And then, God, who's the other person on the, Jaga's, wife, Jessica, also sang on the song as well. which I thought was incredibly cool. Like you have the wife of a person who's worked with the producer of a podcast willing to contribute to that project. I just thought that was neat.
Oh, for sure. What, she's Depressica?
Yeah, Depressica. Yeah.
So great. Let's just talk about like favorite episodes a little bit.
In the Bush. Absolute favorite episode of all time by far.
Really?
It's so aesthetically pleasing. And I probably am different from most of the audience because they watch like a 50-minute episode. I'm with that footage for like 9 hours. So like this background I've seen hundreds of hours of. So I think just having the Alaskan wilderness in the back, having all of that footage,
the B-roll stuff.
It's not fun to go through B-roll, but once you've actually implemented it, and if like you watch the intro to that episode, like we have footage that Adam took out the side of a plane in Alaska. Like it's just incredible. One, Glenn is incredibly interesting person, as I've discussed. And having your dad
love you some Glenn Villeneuve.
Oh my God. I mean, who does those episodes? Like look at the comments. The people who commented on those videos love them some Glenn Villeneuve.
Oh yeah. He's got a huge following.
Huge following. And I just think that's not a type of person I get exposed to. Like we talked about earlier, lots of local comics in the podcast. And then the people in my life are like a lot of entrepreneurial people or musicians. I don't get exposed to somebody like him in his environment like that.
Oh, absolutely.
And then having your dad there, I think also added something to the podcast. It added like another seasoned voice. Like if you go back and listen to it, your dad like was just dropping sort of wisdom bombs throughout that are like actually kind of profound. And so I thought that was really cool.
Dude, I hated my performance on that episode. I've been shitting in the woods for 3 days with this sleeping bag that like, this is sort of the behind the scenes. Like people don't know. There were so many episodes where I was just ruined, like 4 hours of sleep ahead of time. And I'm sitting there and my brain's not working and I'm just completely disoriented. And I was sitting there. This is what I didn't like about that episode. We recorded it on the last day of being in the woods for 3 or 4 days. So when you're in the woods, you have conversations constantly, right? So at the end of the weekend, it was like we had talked about everything.
Yeah.
And then we're like, hey, do you want to go have a conversation on camera? So it was like sort of everything we would have, like, I wish I had it rolling when we were on walks
and
or
just
at the
like
woods.
edited it throughout.
Yeah. And I don't know how to do that with like, dude, it was to get that equipment up to that space on a float plane.
It's crazy.
And I figured out like how to do this in the smallest way possible, but I was terrified that the audio wasn't going to come out and we were always like kind of working ahead, but still like if you lose an episode, it was a pain in the ass to like figure out something, to lose the Glenn episode versus like what is just a regular, like we had cameras not be on for a couple of these things, but to have that happen on that episode, like you're getting that one time.
Yep.
And it was the best. I mean, somebody commented on the video and they're like, you know, you sound uninterested. And I'm like, dude, I had diarrhea, you know, like I was so sick of being in the woods at that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was fucking freezing. So
yeah, it's interesting to hear that perspective. Cause like as a viewer personally, I didn't get that impression that you were uninterested, but like as the producer, I had all the B-roll while you guys are hiking out in the woods, talking about things that you then hear about in the episode. So that's,
and you edited that one very well. Like there's certain things where if you hadn't done that, it would have made it definitely worse. So
I appreciate that. I think I'm decent at my job. I'm not looking for new opportunities though. I think some of the other ones I really enjoyed, and this might seem strange, I mentioned it, but the Verlin Roberts episode, I think it was the morning after that I loved so much. Because like we talk about like the process and just being a part of like moving forward.
Yeah.
And then having such a significant moment of exposure.
Did I tell you what happened later on?
No.
With that? So one of our guests, I don't want to say who it was, but their partner works for Bungie.
Okay.
and they're in the legal department. And this person came over to watch the episode and we were talking afterwards, and I was like, yeah, I mean, that's cool that you worked for Bungie. Like I had a guy that did some work for them, and that person's like, who was it? I told, and he just goes, that was you. And it was so the coincidence. Basically, we created a tremendous amount of work for this person, completely unintentionally, because they woke up and they're like, "Oh my god, our release date just got leaked."
Well,
and
it was hilarious to see like IGN, like the biggest gaming news website,
say Fathom and Friends podcast,
and to be attached to that and be like, "Hey, that's me."
It's still on the internet.
Yeah, too. It's that, to me, that was really, really cool. The Dave Landau episode. Just because like I'm, as I mentioned, like not huge into the comedy scene, but that's a name I had known.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, again, like a lot of like my favorite episodes aren't even like the content that was in there. I have a few of them that I'll mention that I was dying laughing from beginning to end. But my favorite moments are moments where it felt like progress was achieved, or like we'd hit some sort of milestone.
Yeah.
It's like blowing up and going viral is one of them.
Yeah.
Filming in Alaska with somebody who was on JRE and Nat Geo, and just an incredibly interesting person. Eric Almirola being a NASCAR driver. Dave Landau, somebody who like I know of in the comedy scene. And to me, just being like, holy shit, like, wait, we're getting like actual, like we're not just having friends come on, although it is Fathom and Friends. Like we're having like professionals who have made a living doing this, and other, like that was a really cool moment. A recent one, the B Flat episode.
Dude, she's so
unbelievably funny.
Yeah.
Unbelievably funny. From beginning to end. Her charisma is just like unmatched.
You should see her on stage, bro.
I need to. I need to see a lot of these people on stage too. But
Morgan Murphy, that episode was unreal.
Yeah.
Like I had people reach out to me and just be like, dude, Morgan Murphy, like it was so nice of her to do it. And we've been very lucky with the people that have given their time to do stuff like that. I really thought Gianmarco Ceresi was super interesting. I was bummed because there were a couple times with doing this shit where like Wi-Fi was an issue and connectivity was an issue. And when that starts happening in the middle of an episode, like you're doing what you can do. But
are you referring to podcast episode 134 that I hosted on Zoom, where we had 58 minutes of footage and cut it down to 34 minutes of footage? And I'd say 9 of those minutes were just like completely ruined and wrecked.
I was sitting over there listening to it happen.
Dude, it was, I know I can empathize with that feeling because you're watching someone Zoom glitch out.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know. For some reason, when like the cameras are up and everything, you feel like it's live. You feel like, oh my God, it's all falling apart right now.
This one hasn't felt that way to me. But I've had episodes where it's like I feel the cameras. I feel, especially the cameras.
It's the cameras. I mean, even the microphone. You hear somebody talking and talking and talking, and you turn the microphone on, and then all of a sudden they're like really soft spoken, and they don't want to go into huge detail. They don't want to like show who they are.
I don't know what that is.
Performance anxiety.
That makes sense.
They know that this is going to be forever. This is like their impression that some people will have. But
everyone's concept of that is different, right? So even my grandpa that came on a couple episodes before this, he kind of acted different on. But there are some people that get on and they are the same way.
Yeah.
And those, I think it's just people that have a lot of reps with it.
Yeah.
I'm way more comfortable now than, I mean, when I started, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
It was
neither of us really did. I had a somewhat baseline understanding of audio mixing. I know how to make people's voices sound professional. Podcast sequencing, fading in, fading out. These are all things I'm like, okay, we're going to have to learn this. Like one track versus dual tracks. How do we, I think it was episode 4. I think I probably spent like 12 hours on the audio trying to get the quality up to like somewhat of a level that we can put it out to the public. And I I don't think I reached that. I still think the quality on that episode, audio wise, not content wise, is just like poor.
Yeah. And well, we didn't have all the equipment too. It's like, oh, we need to get gain boosters. We need to, and stuff has changed since then. But there's just been a lot of like evolution from a content standpoint, from a production standpoint, and it's been fun to learn this stuff. I'm ready to have if I'm gonna pursue something again moving forward, I want to do it in a way where like I'm sort of in a talent position and somebody else wants to do the production side, but it's a ways off to do that. So
and there are 3 other episodes that I wanted to shout out. Gina, that episode again, just someone expertise and like it seemed very comfortable with themselves.
Yep.
And just like crushed it. What was Sarush's I'm scrolling through Handwalla episode.
That was, I think, in the top 5.
Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And just like his story and like being a storytelling themed podcast where a lot of people don't know how to tell a fucking story. Having him come on and talk about like the refugee camps, assimilating into America, playing in the MLS, you're just sort of like jaw drops and you're like,
he was a great storyteller.
Great storyteller.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And then I can't even remember what episode this was. What episode was it where you talk about poop chest? Who even was on? I think it was Thomas Nichols. And that episode fucking was a nightmare to edit. That was one where my editing software shit the bed on me. It wouldn't work. That episode probably took me between like 20 and 30.
That's right.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. And
I had to watch the poop chest story probably 10 to 15 times. And on like the 15th listen, I'm still just like, what the fuck is this? What is my life? How is, like when you're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation, like freeze frame. That's how I felt when someone's like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? And I'm like, I listened to a story about poop chest for about 4 hours of my life.
I completely forgot about poop chest until you brought it up right now. That fucking story still rules, dude. It was such a weird time in my life.
And I don't remember even when. I want to say it was like episode 131. I'll put it in the show notes. Go back and listen to the story time from that episode. And just, if you haven't heard it, just...
Which one is that?
The poop chest story.
That's the poop.
I just want people to go back and either re-listen or listen for the first time with headphones, not around young children. And just know that this is who you were following for all of these years.
Yeah, that's another part of this, dude. I'm 34 now.
Yeah.
Like, being at the very end of my 20s and doing a podcast, like things they're changing for me.
Yeah.
I'm like just getting older and my life's changing quite a bit. Like I can't do the same bullshit that I was doing before. And it's time to make a change.
Well, I'm curious how you feel about like having some of those. I guess there's like 2 lanes of this question. And one is like, how do you feel knowing that there's like permanent history of you sucking at podcasting and me sucking at producing at podcasting just on the internet forever?
It's something I accepted a long time ago.
Okay. And how do you feel about like I wouldn't say like intimate stories, but like there's people out there that know things about you that like that's out there and that's like knowledge about you.
It's probably good that it didn't blow up. like the podcast isn't as big, but I also recognize that. Look, there's intimate information about me, but nobody's thinking about me as much as
you're thinking about.
Yeah, and
except for maybe maybe me.
That's true. Yeah.
But no, you're totally right.
Yeah, it's just it's sort of cost of doing business a little bit too.
Yeah.
Where if my style of comedy is putting myself out there and being open with the audience, that's some of the collateral. Like,
yeah, but okay, so when I've been to a few of your stand-up shows, and a lot of your jokes, they are personal jokes. Mm-hmm. but there's a detachment, or there's at least an emotional detachment. So like we were joking about this before we started recording, but like the joke about Brian's dad, which I won't butcher for all the listeners. You should go to one of Adam's shows. And that one, you're talking about your relationship with your dad a little bit, but it never feels like, you never feel like, oh, I'm getting an inside look into Adam's relationship with his dad.
Yeah.
But on some of these episodes, like you're pretty open and honest, and you are getting an inside look. So I feel like with the stand-up, everybody sort of knows there's a little bit of hyperbole, exaggeration, or even if there isn't, that's what the audience expects. They don't expect you to be like your raw, authentic self on stage. But in a podcast, people do expect that.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if like how you deal with that sort of like delineation between your stage presence.
I think it's made me better as a stand-up.
Yeah.
Because I just realized the stuff that's more authentic to me hits harder. So the goal is to get as close to that without causing any damage to anybody.
Yeah.
And it's hard, like always trying to approach a joke, not from like a place of shitting on somebody, but like finding what's funny about it.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people when they're starting, like they're going at a particular person and it comes off as mean. And like you're trying to make them laugh. You're not trying to get even with your ex or whatever. And there's been personal stuff that's gone on behind the scenes for me throughout this thing where I'm having to turn on these cameras and like I've had major depression over the past 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And I did want to say, like, anybody watching these last 5 episodes, like, I really have been kind of, like, I just got put on a new medication. It seems to be helping, but, like, I was checked out for a while, leaving Boeing and leaving that security and then going into this, like, oh, I'm a road comic now lifestyle. There's so much uncertainty and it's just so crazy.
Yeah.
And it's completely like changed my mindset around stuff. I love doing this and I've loved the experiences, but it's also like it's hard to consistently just keep putting on those cameras.
Yeah.
Like when you have big things happening personally.
Is that different than knowing you always have to step up on the stage?
No. Like in a lot of ways it's because I'm hiding it from the camera.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to make this episode about my depression. I'm going to do this. But like there were certain, even with my, yeah. There were times like my grandpa came on shit. And like, I wasn't 100%. There's a lot of episodes where I'm like, I couldn't be my best because I was too tired.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of putting out stuff that's that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I ask a lot too because I have music on the internet that I'm like, a lot of it I'm really proud of and I want to keep up there forever. And a lot of it I'm like, I could delete it. At any point I can erase it, but I feel like why? And I feel like it's always this struggle of like, I've bared, and not quite to the level of like 150 plus episodes of podcasting, but I'm like, oh, that's like a piece of information I put in that song that like, I don't know if I want the whole world knowing at any point. And the whole world doesn't listen to my music.
Yeah, you would have to get famous for that to be a problem.
Right.
And
that's not happening. For me, I personally, unless this episode just blows up completely.
I don't think it will be.
I don't think
very
so.
Funny. So.
I think regardless of whether or not I'm with fame, it's something that's in the back of my head. Anytime I'm going to do something that could garner any attention in this internet age, of knowing there's one freak out there who will absolutely find anything and everything you've ever released and put out and find some way to embarrass you.
Yeah.
I've just seen that happen for everybody, random people, not famous people, random people who are a part of one viral moment. And then all of a sudden their whole life becomes, and you've just done that willingly every week.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding.
I'm getting out in front of this shit.
Yeah. I don't know. When I cross that, I do think bombing in stand up helps with a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's what I see is it took all those episodes to get to where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And you don't get better at something by not doing it. So it's easy to like be that person to go and clip and say like, hey, look at how stupid this person looks. Like, try and do this shit.
Right.
Do 181 podcast episodes and then let's have a conversation about it.
Dude, I think about this all the time with any sort of criticism of art. Mm-hmm. I like with music, I was like, I really only cared about the opinions of other musicians.
Yeah.
And like, that could be a flawed way of looking at things. But like, at the same time,
there's a balance.
There's a balance for sure. Like in my business ventures, I actually didn't care what other entrepreneurs thought. I cared about what customers thought.
Absolutely.
Oh, you think my business is silly? Who cares what you think?
Yeah.
But like with art, it's just so much more personal. It's just an interesting, because there's some people who came on here and you could tell they were reserved and nervous to show themselves. And there are other people who it's like, you need to sort of tone this down. This is forever.
Yeah.
And like this.
Talking about using cocaine.
Yeah.
Like very publicly.
Yeah.
You know, like, which is, you know, I guess, I don't know, man. The one thing about the internet that's interesting is it's really, it continues to destroy like expectations. So I think like Matt Rife is somebody that has had a ton of success online.
Yeah.
And he's
the Blue Chew spokesman, right?
I think so.
I'm just joking. I know he's a comedian. Yeah. His ads for Blue Chew dick pills come up all the time.
It's essentially, it turns this person into a character, right? Mm-hmm. These crowd work clips and all this shit. And it, to me, like, that's not stand up. You know, like when somebody's coming to see you do the blank thing, mm-hmm. like it's not really stand up. And there's a dying art form with stand up of like being able to win an audience over and like, I don't like play to rooms that not everybody's there to see you. And it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And hopefully eventually someday you get an audience of your own and you don't have to do that as much, but like to not learn that process, there's a bunch of people that are skipping that step, mm-hmm. and you see them live and it's just like, this isn't really stand up. It's the same thing as like a sitcom in the 90s where somebody's like, oh, that's the catchphrase guy. And
right.
They go and see Dustin Diamond or whatever. Like he's doing Screech voice, like his Screech character and shit. And that is in comedy. That's not like, to me, that's not the stand-up that I want to pay money and see.
Yeah.
And it's not the stand-up that I want to do.
I'm curious, do you think it's mostly the internet? Because I've seen from when I started watching comedy, it's like Comedy Central specials. Mm-hmm. That's like everybody's introduction, I feel like, into stand-up. Very structured. I have these bits. Or like late night, like they have 7 minutes and like, here are my 2 bits that I'm doing. And now I feel like every single promotional clip is crowd work. Mm-hmm. All of the biggest comedians on social media are crowd work.
Because they don't want to burn material.
Is that why?
Yeah.
Okay.
They want to get themselves out there. But what I have a problem with is people doing, or not a problem with, but like, I don't give a fuck what anybody else is doing on the internet. I genuinely don't care. Like, I'm not that person that's sitting around being like, this guy does this thing and like crossing my arms. Like, do whatever you want to do on the internet. Just like accept that you're putting yourself in that lane, right? Yeah. So if I have a show that I'm doing and there's something that I think is funny and worth posting, I'll post it. But I'm not going up there and being like, oh, I'm going to intentionally do these things to get a clip. Like there are people that are out doing that now. And it's like, that's not crowd, like real crowd work is, there are comedians that like are great crowd work comedians. And it's a disservice to those comics, but this thing changes it changes with the technology or whatever. So like if you're sitting around, you're like, this isn't this and that isn't that. It's like, dude, give it 5 years and it's going to be something different too. Like everything changes. So
it was weird for me, just like being on the front lines of an industry, and like the podcasting, I guess, was more tangential to stand up, but I know like very little about and getting so much exposure to, gaining so much like periphery knowledge from you and like things that all of a sudden I'm seeing when I'm watching YouTube videos. And I'm like, me and Adam sort of like talked about this with regards to his last set. It's just sort of fascinating. And then also like going to more stand-up shows. I mean, it's not like I've been to every single one of your shows, but I've been to more stand-up shows since I met you than I have any other time in my life ever.
For sure. It's not that many people go.
Yeah.
It's that's the other piece of this. It's like, if you looked at what the like raw, the macro level of like how much money is, how much of a market is there for stand-up comedy? I don't know. I do know that like it's probably, you know, that 80-20 rule where like there's a couple people that own the majority of the audience.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's growing or shrinking. I think it comes in like these, stand-up seems to like expand and contract with technology and exposure and shit. So I don't know where, if we're in like a golden age or it already passed, or if it's gonna keep getting bigger or what, but live entertainment I don't think is going anywhere. I don't know like how VR and like all these other things could impact it. It's a hard way to make money. It's a really fucking hard way to make money. If you love doing it, you know, that's great. But if you don't love doing it, it's probably not the thing to like, it's on par with music, you know, like it's just, there's not that many people that can make a life out of it.
I think, I mean, even if there was a lot of money in it, if there's anything I've learned the last like decade, it's okay. You do the thing you don't like to do or you're not passionate about doing, and you get the money, and then what? And like other people have different philosophies, but like you can do it with art, music, business. Like why throw yourself into something that you don't love the process of? If you're just looking for a certain outcome, what is the point? Because there's a million ways to reach that outcome that you think you desire.
Yeah.
But you've chosen like this very inefficient path to reach this like idealized outcome that you don't even know what that is. I'm getting like super ethereal right now, but I see this all the time, especially with people who are like, I see it in business most often because that's the world I'm in now. But people who are like, I'm going to do this because I want to either be seen as X, I want to achieve Y financial freedom, or for like this other reason. And it's like, okay, so what you're chasing after is like freedom of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a million ways to get freedom of time that don't involve you trying to build a business. One, you might not even have the skill set to be a comedian, a business person, a musician, but it's like you've idealized this outcome of I am this, so I must achieve this to be recognized by everybody else. And it's like, yeah, but you need to do some like groundwork first to figure out if that's what you actually want.
That's the hardest thing though, is with this particular path, there is no map.
Yeah.
And you can see what other people have done and been like, it's very entrepreneurial.
Totally.
Where you're like, this person did this, but maybe if I go to, and the thing is what worked for them isn't going to work for you. They had different opportunities and different chances and luck that went their way. But I do think, I know doing this has made me a better comic.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot about myself. I don't regret doing any of this, but I do think you're right in that it's an inefficient use of my energy and my time. That doesn't mean that it hasn't made me a better person and a better artist.
Yeah.
And like listening to other artists talk and all the different types of people that I've had on, I've had a lot of like, I've learned a lot. So, and that was kind of what I wanted to do to begin with.
Yeah.
So I don't resent it. It just was like day one, the goal was not to get famous. It was to create something cool.
Dude, I think we've give you advice, quote unquote, of like, hey, you should do this. And you're like, I'm not going to do that. Even though you might be right. And that would make the podcast more successful because that's not my artistic vision. Mm-hmm. Like from like episode like 7, where I'd be like, hey, we should be doing this on social media. And you're like, I'm not going to fucking film myself doing little rants next to my podcast setup for like, that's just not who I want to be when you talk about like being in that lane or, and that's one thing I really, as a like business-minded producer would get really frustrated at.
Yeah.
But also really respected of like, well, that this is his vision. He's the one writing the checks to me. I can give my advice and like tell him what I think, but ultimately like this is his project that I'm trying to help shepherd.
I think now I would be more comfortable with stuff like that. But when I didn't have the experience, I wasn't ready to do those things.
Yeah.
I literally started podcasting when I started doing stand-up.
Yeah. No, like at the exact same time, pretty much.
And writing a cartoon. So it was like, it took a long time to get any of those products to where they're marketable and sellable.
Yeah.
And I didn't like, I know it's good I didn't do some of those things. It could have helped.
All I know is if he would have listened to me, we'd be in a real studio right now and I would be driving a nicer car.
Yeah.
But this fucker wouldn't listen to me and now I'm stuck on Casino Road.
I got to get out of here.
Yeah. And anything else you think the listeners should know or you want them to know?
Dude, I wanted to say thank you.
Yeah.
Like it's been, I know this whole episode's been like this sentimental thing, but I don't think I would have stuck with stand up without this relationship. Like I always felt like you were in my corner for everything. And that was why inevitably, like I needed to be done with this project, at least temporarily. And, you know, there have been so many problems that you've solved, and having you with an artistic background, like it was the perfect, like I completely lucked out with having you do this work for me. You were the only person I asked, and it worked immediately for me. And you are very good at what you do. I would recommend you to anybody for almost any project. Anything
other than a podcast. Yeah.
Like you will always have a ticket at any of my shows you want to go to, man. And you just got engaged. I'm happy for you. Like you're going to do some coaching for basketball stuff, which I mean, people probably don't know, but Henry is probably one of the best basketball players in like Seattle. I mean,
I'm actually not going to disagree with you there.
Yeah. You should be in the Pro-Am if you're not. Like it's
well, maybe after I recover from my surgeries. Thank you for saying that. Being a part of this has been really cool, if not just to see what it looks like, what consistency looks like in action, and to have like mutual accountability sucked sometimes. There were times where I'm on vacation and we have an issue with an episode and I have to like look at my partner and be like, I need to deal with this. The episode gets released in 12 hours. I'm in Atlanta at a Hawks Charlotte game and the videographer has not gotten us the videos back. The episode's supposed to be released in 12 hours. I'm like frantically texting at this basketball game, like, where are these files? Trying to like be nice because I don't want to burn the bridge, but I'm also like, you are fucking me right now.
Sure.
And that part sucked. Having this sort of consistency in my life where it's like, you need to output this project every week, no questions asked. There's no, like, we were friends before we started this. So I guess my perspective is like, I don't mind messing up in business. I really mind messing up in friendships and relationships. And so I did always view this as like more than just like, this is my job. It was always like, I'm helping out Adam. And so having that like shared accountability. And if you look at some of the other local podcasts that have come up during this time, just check and see how consistently they're dropping episodes.
For sure.
How long those episodes are, who the guests are. A lot of them don't have guests. And this isn't to shit on anybody who's doing something with their time creatively. That's awesome. But just to give some perspective of like a grassroots bootlegged operation to every week release an episode.
For 4 years.
No questions asked, no excuses, no like, hey, sorry we missed. I've seen big podcasts will post on like Twitter or whatever, like, oh, sorry we missed this week. We'll be back next week.
We never missed a week.
We didn't take a vacation.
Yeah, dude.
And again, I think that led to a little bit of the burnout of just like, whoa, I'm kind of just, I can't do this anymore. But now that like there was this, once I like had the end point set, I was able to like take a step back and just be like, holy shit, I've been in this world for 4 years.
Yeah, dude, same.
It's crazy.
Emotionally, I've been all over the place about it.
Yeah.
And I think I'm relieved in a lot of ways. Like there's every I mean, the social media component of it, all of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm proud of what we did. And I'm sure that if there's an opportunity that comes up where I have like, might not be a podcast, but you would be number one on the list of talk to.
Hit me up. I'm working with you has been great. Like developing our friendship through this project has been great.
Yeah. I don't think we fought one time.
No, we really like that was like when we talked about like Mike and Chase, me and Adam, the relationship was so good in terms of just like, we had frustrations, we had setbacks, we had failures, we had wins, we had losses, and never once did that get in the way of like, we are all creative people trying to create something.
Yeah.
Oh, I dropped the ball on this week. I'm going to make up for it next week. No excuses. I messed up. I'm going to fix this. And that working relationship was fantastic. But also the fact that it didn't get in the way of anything else, I thought was really cool.
It was fun, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate everything you did, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And everybody listening, thank you so much. Everybody watch us on YouTube, thank you so much. I don't know what it'll be long term. I'm sure whatever I end up doing, there will be something else. If you enjoyed this stuff, we have a bunch of episodes too. So if you haven't listened to them all, go back, check out some of the older ones. Some are good, some are not. We had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll keep the audience posted on producer Henry a little bit, the reincarnated version.
Let him know if I die again.
Yeah, exactly, dude. And just for fun, if you like this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notifications bell. We are on Patreon still, patreon.com/FNFpod if you want to throw us a couple bucks on the way out. And then we're on Instagram at FNFpod. As always, we're going to leave you with Jaga.
I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. My wave pool, my wave pool. Welcome to 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 my wave pool.